Thank you, everybody, and thank you for your patience during that delay. I believe this is being webcast on the YouTube. So, Andy, if I could ask you to come forward once again. I know who knew you get two bites of the cherry. But look, just to reiterate your points and to talk to us on item 5.
Thank you, Leader. So, take 2. So, there were a couple of things on section 1.5. Firstly, the last bin rollout was not in 1993, it was the green bins in 2001. And that was to replace the piggyback bins that came out in the 1993 rollout of the black bins. Section 1.5 also indicates the only time the council will take responsibility for a damaged or lost bin is when it goes down the back of a lorry. And by my reckoning, that's only 5% of the time, according to last year's figures in section 2.1. Now, I have a question on section 2.3, which states, prior to the policy which was introduced in 2015, requiring residents to pay for waste bins, including replacements, there were higher numbers of requests compared to current numbers. But that's simply an assertion. What hard evidence in the form of figures do you have to back that up? And then the other question I have doesn't relate to anything on the papers because it was missed out, but I'm certain it was covered in the CEP committee. What provisions are being made for flatted developments? And my final point is, given that the meagre savings listed in the table for section 2.2, which I made to be approximately £20,000 for last year, and the massive unpopularity of new and replacement bin charges, I question the sanity of continuing to charge for them. Thank you.
I'm grateful for that. Councillor Aegis, do you want to introduce the paper and comment on those questions?
Thank you, Leader. So this is a recommendation to Cabinet to confirm that the Council's bin replacement policy should remain unchanged and endorse the improved communication of the policy to residents as set out in the report, because whilst we our position is that the policy is fit for purpose, we did find when looking into this that maybe it wasn't explained and communicated enough to residents. So we have updated information on the website for residents. The contact centre have further information to be able to impart that to residents if they ring up about replacement bins. So I am recommending to Cabinet tonight that we do accept that our bin replacement policy, which does include a charge for black bins, is confirmed. We do, in line with our climate emergency, not charge for replacement bins in relation to our recycling bins. So that's our green glass containers, the boxes, and the green bins for recycling. And if you have the room, you are also entitled to extras of those at no extra charge, because we want to encourage recycling. So just turning to the points raised by Councillor McCormick, firstly in relation to the statement at 2.3, where we did have higher numbers compared to those that we've got now. That is correct, because I remember when we were looking at these a number of years ago to bring this policy in, we were seeing quite high numbers. However, information on bin numbers has now been compiled into one system since the new contract with Serco. It's one of the benefits of the new contract that we've got that single transparent system. So those figures are from knowledge of, so the statement in 2.3 is from knowledge of officers that have been working on this contract for a number of years, and also myself, and there probably is some historical information somewhere, but I'm not sure how easy it is to get that, but I am confident that that statement is correct. So that then leads into Councillor McCormick's point about the fact we're only saving £20,000. We're saving £20,000 based on those figures, but if the bins were to be replaced free of charge, it is highly likely, and I'm quite confident, that we would have a lot more requests for replacement bins, which would end up costing the council substantially more than the £20,000. The last issue that Councillor McCormick raised was in relation to flatted developments, and he's correct, that's not in this report, but it was discussed at length at committee, and I've also discussed it with Caroline on a number of occasions at councillor groups. Flatter developments, we do accept they are very different. There is a lot more issues there because you have one bin store, but we're doing a lot of work in relation to that. We're working with housing associations. We're trying our best to work with management companies. We're improving signage. We offer recycling bags to people in flatted developments, and where people are keen recyclers but are finding it hard to recycle in their flatted developments, officers work with them. It's not an easy task, but there is a lot of work going on in that regard, and we're doing everything we can. And I will be continuing to push, because I know one of the issues with flatted developments is also relates to planning, where developers don't make bin store areas big enough. So we will be pushing for that to be more prominent in planning applications with developers. But yeah, I do recommend the paper to Cabinet and ask that we endorse the recommendation that I've already read out.
I'm grateful for that. As bins affect us all in our ward work, Cabinet, have you anything to add to Councillor Eaches's comments? No, then I will make a couple of comments. To see there are only been 13 corporate complaints since January 2019. I believe that we are providing a service that is fit for our residents. Not always an easy thing, because we all know that if something is damaged that is our property, we do feel tainted by that. But I believe that the charges are fair. They're equitable for something that can, over time, waste, and obviously we know that sitting in sunlight will deteriorate plastic. I believe that the majority of our residents understand that things get replaced over time, and they do in many items in their household, and this is just one of those. I suggest that many people should take a little bit more time to clean their bins. It makes it better for them, but also for the handlers in Circle. Nobody wants to be dealing with smelly or bins that have flies, or even worse, maggots in them. So there's a requirement on all of us to make sure that the bins are kept as well as they can. But I endorse what my portfolio holder says, and I am happy to accept the recommendation that is in front of us and the policy to remain unchanged. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you for that. Therefore, we move to item number 6. And before I get Councillor Eaches once again to introduce the paper, I'd like to invite forward Andy, who's already seated at his spot. Andy, you have 4 minutes from now to give us your comments on this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. 2 questions to start off with. The first one is, has any consideration been given to the pending Winklebury regeneration scheme and the fact that the Winklebury Centre bring banks might be removed temporarily or permanently as a result? And my second question is in reference to the proposed removal of bring banks, in particular at Watson Way and Stratton Park. The bring banks are being well used. Why remove them? Looking at the options in front of the paper, personally I wouldn't choose any of the options listed here. We need our bring banks open. We need to make sure they're kept clean and tidy. We need to increase the range of recyclable materials offered. We need to transition to a zero waste, fully cyclic economy. The traditional means of improving recycling take-up was to offer at bring banks what might not be economical to collect from the curbside, and when it eventually is offered at the curbside, still offer bring banks to maximise the amount of recyclable material recovered. The tonnages listed in Appendix 4 don't even mention some of the banks and the materials you're trying to remove. How can you make an informed decision on this basis? This council has signally failed its residents with a massive and increasing problem with fly tipping. With a rejected council motion and now this, the public will see this council as closing its eyes and putting its fingers in its ears. Do not see the May election as a ringing endorsement by voters of your woeful track record on recycling and fly tipping. it is not. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Regis.
Thank you, Leader. So this is a paper seeking Cabinet's approval that all paper and cardboard banks are removed from all council managed Bring sites, save for a number that we will keep open. All Bring site facilities are removed from the 8 sites listed in paragraph 6.1 of this report, and the land reinstated as car parking. The paper, cardboard, glass and Bring banks are removed from the 12 sites listed at 6.3 of the report, and the owner of the 12 Bring sites listed in Appendix 3 attached to this report are informed of the council intention to stop providing and maintaining Bring bank facilities at these sites, and that the Bring banks, as I mentioned earlier, are retained at the 6 sites listed in Appendix 3 attached to this report, with improvements to signage, with the repair of replacement of old bins being carried out. And we will then take steps on investigation on how best to utilise CCTV for dealing with the fly tipping issues will be undertaken at the sites that we will retain. So I appreciate that's a big thing to look like we are doing all of. It's a huge thing to be doing, but this hasn't been a quick decision. This has been something that's been discussed for a considerable amount of time. It's been looked at in detail. All the relevant figures and information has been gathered. We have started conversations with some parish councils and will continue to do that with other parishes and other relevant residents associations in the areas where we do want to close them. We have to stress that everything that we manage at these Bring sites that can be recycled at curbside, and we take side waste for recycled waste at curbside, so we're not stopping people from recycling. That's absolutely not the intention of this paper. And the sites that we intend to keep, we've done that at their strategic sites so that everybody in the borough has somewhere that they can easily access if they do have added recycling that they cannot put out at Bring bank or wait for their next collection and want to can't put it out at curbside and want to take it to the Bring bank. So that's one of the reasons. Obviously, we considered at length charities, because a number of charities do have textiles banks at these sites, and that was one of the reasons why we were quite hesitant to begin with. But then charities started to approach us, especially because of COVID and the things that they want to take and recycle now, and textiles that they were starting to remove their banks. So we're not wanting to affect them in any way, and we've been working closely with them. We've also had to bear in mind the issue of fly tipping, and this has got worse at many of the sites, and it has been awful, and it gets to the point where people fly tip. Our contractor is very proactive. They're out usually within 24 hours and they clear it. And I think people just see that as like, oh, I can take something there and it will just get cleared. So they see it as a mini HWRC and leave all their fridges and everything there. Or they think that it's okay to do that because it's then cleared so quickly. Where we have had to close some of the sites, so one at Ruxtall and one at Morrison's, that hasn't increased fly tipping in the area. In fact, I think it's made people realise that that isn't a mini HWRC, that they can just leave their fridges and old mattresses, etc. there. We haven't seen an increase in fly tipping in that area. So we are taking this step. It did go to committee. This paper was discussed at length and it did have the approval of the committee. In fact, there were some good discussions and there was some, people were really supportive of this. And the parish councils that we've worked with so far have also been very supportive of this. In relation to the issues raised, by Councillor McCormick, I think you've asked about consideration given to the Winkleby regeneration. We've looked at the site strategically and officers would have considered that, but it's something I can take back to them. And when we do take steps to close each site, we will be working with any residents associations and local councillors. And any sites we are keeping, we will be working with the relevant organisations and improving signage, looking at CCTV. So anything that's going on in that area that's relevant to it would be taken into account. I know you've mentioned Watson Way and Stratton Park, and you say they're widely used. I mean, most of our Bring banks are, but again, the fly tipping's an issue, and everything that can be recycled there can be recycled at curbside. And we've had numerous issues at Stratton Park recently with people setting fire to the Bring banks, which it just isn't acceptable. So we can't continue to keep them there. Yes, we want to increase the range of recycle stuff that we can recycle, but we would want to push that at curbside instead of people using their carbon footprint to drive to an area. And we're always working with Hampshire to push that and increase the range of recycling materials. We're working with all the government consultations at the moment to look at how we're changing the way we recycle, and we'll be bringing that forward probably sometime in the new year once the government have considered the consultations and come back to us with what they're proposing. So this has been widely thought through, and we're not taking away something from residents that they can't continue to do. We can absolutely continue to recycle all of those items at curbside, and any bring banks, Councillor McCormick, you say are not mentioned or dealt with, that's because they're not ones that we own or manage, but we have discussed that with the relevant people, and that there'll be items that would be not used very often anyway. So it's the biggest items are the ones that we can recycle at curbside, and I encourage people to do that. We can have side waste. If you have the room, you can have additional recycling bins, and we're working with county and the government consultations to look at how we increase recycling going forward.
I'm grateful for that. Recycling is important to us all, and obviously we are all impacted in our wards by fly tipping. Cabinet, anything that you would like to add? Councillor Bound.
I just really wanted to pick up on something that Councillor McCormick said, because one of his assertions is fundamentally absolutely wrong. When I talk to my colleagues who are responsible for community safety across the county, under the auspices of the new Antisocial Behaviour Task Force, our record on prosecuting fly tipping, and of course we would want to reduce it, but our record on prosecuting fly tipping is one of the highest in the county.
Thank you. No, I don't think I will let you, actually. Thanks, Councillor McCormick. Councillor Golding.
Thank you, Leader. I think it's quite sad that we're here in some ways. I think particularly with the fly tipping and the misuse of these sites and how difficult it has been to manage. I know in Oakley it's been a constant thorn in the side of the parish council who own the park where it is, and it's made people who have used the site well, it's massively disadvantaged them. You know, Serco will come and clear up fly tipping and there's new stuff within 24 hours, so it looks like they were never there at all. We've had few human waste at Beach Park being left. They've not been working well for quite some time now, and I don't like taking them away, but I do think that it is probably the answer for us right now. I'm very supportive of us kind of doing extra communications, as Hayley said, around options for recycling, particularly extra bins, and being able to put more recyclable waste out, because I would hate this to kind of influence how much people recycle, but it really doesn't have to, and if anything we can make recycling easier, particularly by supporting them with free extra green bins, and letting them do more of that at curbside. As the proud recipient of a second green win this year, I can say I'm very happy. And recycling is going up in our household. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from Cabinet? Then Andy McCormick, you can ask your additional question. I just want to get through Cabinet first.
Well, picking up on Councillor Bound's assertion that we've got some kind of enviable track record, that simply doesn't sit well with the facts as our residents see them, with the awful incidences of fly tipping, and they have increased in the past 2 years. Part of that might have been down to the pandemic, and part of that is also probably down to the fact that it is more difficult now to get slots at the waste recycling centre at Wade Road. We've known about this for a while, and we have, or should have been, engaging with Hampshire about getting more capacity either at Wade Road or having a new tip. And I know that's been a subject that has been broached. I would like to think there's some progress on that, but the impression I get is that Hampshire want to reduce access to the tips, reduce the opening hours and cut costs when it's a service that is desperately needed by our residents. And if we're so good at prosecuting, why is it that the problem still exists? Because there are people out there who think they won't get caught and are continually appearing to get away with it. And irrespective of whether you have prosecutions, that's not how the public sees it.
I'm grateful for that. I'm sure the portfolio holder would like to add something to that.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. It's just to say, Councillor Bound is absolutely right. We do have one of the highest prosecutions, that's a fact. And we have an extremely good team of officers, both in legal and in environmental health, that deal with this. And yes, there are people that get away with fly tipping, and it's awful. But officers do all they can when there is evidence to prosecute, and that's what we do. And a lot of councils don't have the resources we do. We are, we have to shout about that. We have got all of that. We're doing everything we can. We do prosecute where we can. We then put it in we comms it to say to people that we absolutely will if there's evidence. And also it's we have to thank members of the public, because 9 times out of 10 in these prosecutions, the only way we get that is because it's been witnessed, and that's a really brave thing to do, to come forward to give that evidence. And we work with residents to be able to do that. So that is the factual point, and we will continue to do that. And when we have these 6 sites that we will leave open, we will continue to work with the legal team that where there is evidence, looking at CCTV to catch further fly tippers, and we will continue to do that. And then in relation to the HWRCs, the slots are working in that the traffic down there is so much better, which is so much safer for residents. We're constantly on at Hampshire about the amount of available slots, and they are increasing. I'm not aware that they're looking to reduce those slots any further, and meet up with them regularly on those points. And I'm not aware that the HWRCs is something they're looking to take away. I know as a cabinet we're always pushing for a further HWRC in the borough, given the size of us, and we'll continue to do that with Hampshire. And one of the things I do know is that many people do book slots and they don't then turn up, which then makes an issue for people that do want to turn up, because then it leaves less slots available for those that want to use it. So I would urge residents to make sure, if they are booking slots, that they do use those times, or book them for another day when you are going to go. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. If that is everyone, I'll just make some comments to that. This paper, it talks about personal responsibility, and that is what we as a council and as a community and a set of residents should be aiming for. Personal responsibility in putting your waste out, helping us recycle what we can, when we can. That is the strongest way forward. Personal responsibility, if you see somebody doing something wrong, to report it. It's a crime. It is something that we should take very seriously, not just as a cabinet, but as a community. We want the best for our homes, for where we live, and for the environment that we live in. I believe that fly tipping will always rise. There are more people, there is more waste, but we must discourage them where we can and do whatever we can to ensure that we have the best environment possible. We have choices. The great thing is that supermarkets like Sainsbury's in Tadley, they take batteries. I mean, things that you can do to improve what you recycle. It is, in my view, important that we set about getting those CCTV cameras there that will discourage the bad and encourage the good. In my own ward of Kingsclere, just today we've had a report that there has been fly tipping at the Fieldgate Centre. We need to make sure that that does not happen again, and that the cost and the time it takes to clean up from these irresponsible people is properly laid at their door through the courts. And I would urge us to try and make sure that the fines that are played out in the courts are applicable to the cost that we incur. I believe that the bring back provision is good. Could we do more? Yes, we could. And I think one of the things that we could do more of is remind people that recycling is for not just them and their families, but is for the whole borough. And to do more. We have often said Much of what it goes in the grey bins could be recycled, and we need to encourage them either through leaflets or social media posts to make sure that our community do what they can to ensure that they recycle the most that they can. I'm happy with the paper as laid out and the provision within it. Are we content, Cabinet, as we stand? Indeed. Thank you very much for that. I move now to item number 7, which is the first quarter revenue budget monitoring report. And I'd like to invite the Cabinet Member for Finance and Major Projects, John Isaac, to talk to the paper.
Thank you, Leader. Good evening, Cabinet, officers and fellow councillors. This is the Q1 Revenue Budget Monitoring Report for noting by Cabinet. The first quarter update shows a favourable small variance of £100,000 compared to the approved 21-22 budget. It takes account of approvals by Council in July about the carry forwards from the previous financial year and the allocation of 2021 financial year surplus to Council reserves. At this early point in the financial year, a small surplus, I think, reflects well on our ongoing resilient financial management during a period of massive uncertainty and the extra costs involved in combating the pandemic. I think that compared to many councils who face dire structural financial problems, we have weathered the storm well so far, and our finances remain in good shape. This has been greatly assisted by government funding for much of the extra costs that we've had to bear as a result of COVID. Risks and uncertainties associated with COVID, however, remain. Some of these identified and provided for as far as possible at section 13 of this report. For this council, more normal financial planning looks to be possible, and we are already looking ahead to how best to ensure that the services our residents value can be protected and enhanced where possible. I'm sorry, I lost my thread. Continuing to use council resources to assist local businesses recover from the effects of the pandemic. We are actively utilising the funds set aside in our economic recovery and climate change reserves. £210,000 has been allocated to economic recovery initiatives to provide support over the next year for clean growth, inward investment, town centre recovery and place marketing, amongst other things. Additionally, for this financial year, £250,000 has been allocated from the Climate Change Reserve to drive forward key activities and projects in that priority area for this council. So to conclude, I recommend this report to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. Any comments from Cabinet? Before I deal with the recommendation that's in front of us on page 52, once again I have to flash up the Manidown situation. It is not great to see the overarching business plan returning to us later than anticipated, and I hope that we will all bear that in mind as we move through with that project to try and get that back online. It is a source of some pain on many levels within this council, and it is important that we get it right. The recommendation that is recommended for Cabinet to note only is from 1 to 7, as detailed on page 52. I will not read them out, but they are there for you if you so wish to. Are we agreed that the Cabinet note the report in front of us? Yes. Agreed? Thank you very much. We now move to item agenda number 8, Once again, Councillor John Isaac, the member for Finance and Major Projects, if you'd like to introduce this with your forward.
Okay, yeah, fine, yeah, good. As you say, Leader, this is the Capital Monitoring Report as at the 30th of June 2021. The purpose of this report is to inform Cabinet of any major changes in the capital programme for the period 2021-22 to 2024 to 25, i.e. the MTFS period remaining. And also highlight changes since we last reported to Council in July 2021. The forecast capital expenditure for 21-22 at the end of Q1 is £35.638 million, which is £132,000 or 0.37% above the latest agreed budget for the year. This variance relates to £676,000 of advance spend and £544,000 of anticipated slippage. The report identifies the major items of advanced and delayed spending, including lower spend on the ICT replacement and digital programmes, and some reallocation between capital and revenue spend on the Smarter Ways of Working project as examples. External factors such as COVID have contributed to missing timetables and budgets. Shortages of materials and experts to complete pieces of work have been factors delaying a number of community projects. These are likely to be ongoing problems which will need careful monitoring and management by officers. The big picture, however, is one of carrying out the approved capital spend on time as part of a significant programme of capital investment in our borough.
I'm grateful for that. Cabinet, any comments to make to the portfolio holder or to the wider audience? Are we agreed that we can take the recommendation that Cabinet note from 1 to 7 on page 68? Are we content with that?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. We now move to item 9 on our agenda, which is to the exclusion of the press and public in the workings that we will have going forward. As we will be discussing confidential papers, my job is to agree with members that the meeting is now to become confidential by passing the following motion. That, pursuant to section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public are excluded from the remainder of the meeting on the grounds that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing it, and therefore that that information is likely to be disclosed as defined in paragraph 3, schedule 12.A of the Act. I hope that is fairly clear. We have to vote on that and we have to move on that.
Shall I second it?
That would be terrific. In order for us to discuss the papers, the webcast will be turned off but turned back on again once the discussion is over. I would ask members of the press and or the public to leave the room and let us know when they can be brought back in again once the meeting is no longer confidential. I would ask the committee admin to switch off the webcast. Are we agreed with that? Sorry, Fiona.
Sorry, Leader, you had a mover and a seconder, you didn't vote on it. So
No, that's fine. We will go to the vote now. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much. Therefore, I will ask that members of the public and the press to be excluded and for us to go into a confidential papers once they are through.